Benjamin, let's do some politics now, shall we?
Oh yeah, we're heading to the MPP's camp. Time now to continue our conversation on the governing MPP's internal elections. Our guest today is Amoako Twum. He's vying for the national organizer slot. He's been interacting with my colleague Samuel Kojo Brace.
Welcome to the AM show. An exclusive chat with an aspirant for the national organizer of the New Patriotic Party, Amoako Twum. He's here to tell us more about how government is running the country and what his plans are. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Eventually we met.
I know.
To have this chat. Well, let's start from government. Of course, it's your party, but still I'll have to ask you.
Yes.
What do you make of how your party is governing the country now? Everybody is talking about difficulty. I mean, if not everybody, majority of the country.
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And then also giving me an opportunity to talk about Ghana. Because in all the things that we do, I think that it's the ultimate aim to ensure that whatever we do, regardless of which area we find ourselves, it inures to the benefit of the development of this country. So it's interesting that we are starting with Ghana. I'll tell you that from my perspective, I look at things from a certain half-full standpoint.
Okay.
And as a country, we've come quite a long way. And it's just that, because of the politics, sometimes we refuse to acknowledge where we've come from. And I'll say that even in the last 6 years, I mean, if you're being very objective, this government has done a lot. And sometimes when it comes to key social intervention policies, it takes a while. Some of them are very soft in terms of nature. And so you're unable to touch. But the ripple effect in terms of its impact, long-term, strategically, things that would be of benefit to this country as we go along. And so that's where I see it. I mean, if you want us to have a conversation around what is going on today on a global landscape in terms of issues to do with COVID and its after effects, and then even this whole Russian-Ukraine crisis, and a certain shift in the global political landscape, I mean, then yes, we can have that particular conversation. But the reality on the ground is that you need to situate or contextualize the conversation, even if you want, sector by sector. And you realize that, yes, this government has done tremendously well. That's not to say that if people have certain high expectations, they have no right to profess disquietness or be unhappy with the direction and all of those things. But I believe strongly that we're on the right trajectory because the major building blocks are there and it's evident for everybody to appreciate.
Where are the evidence? What are those building blocks? We don't seem to find them.
And that's what I'm saying, is that it's a matter of perspective. For example, we as a country have been talking about this whole idea of added value to our raw produce, and then also with all the attendant benefits that comes with it. And so you have a government that decides that, yes, since maybe somewhere in the 60s, this is probably the most impactful industrialization drive that has been undertaken in this country. Its impact, but the reality is that when you create a certain special distribution of industry and you activate a value chain, then there's also another ripple effect in terms of long-term, medium to long-term wise. It's benefits to the economy. So those are, I mean, nobody can argue with the whole concept of, industrialization. Then we're talking about governments focus on digitalization and ensuring that we're adding efficiency to either what pertains in the private sector. So you're talking about fintech and the whole conversation around financial inclusion with all the things that we've done, interoperability and all of those things. and various digitalization interventions that governments are taking. Again, you can't have a conversation today about any economy in the world by not talking about digitalization in terms of we found ourselves in a whole new fourth industrial revolution, which is basically hinged on technology and industrialization. So you can't argue with that as well. Then we can go into the whole concept of education, where as a country, for generations, we've been happy with the idea that a certain proportion of our young people would finish basic school education and then that's it. You understand? So you take someone who has a certain level of conviction, right, to say that yes, I mean, in as much as we still have issues to grapple with in the education sector, we need to find a way to ensure that we give opportunities, equal opportunities. And people have even had this conversation in certain instances and they have been misquoted and misconstrued. But the reality on the ground is that the people who contribute, the average farmer, the average fisher folk, the market woman, and all of those things are people who actually probably, if we are being very honest with ourselves, are probably the ones who contribute most to the economy. And their children should have an opportunity to benefit from. And how do you engender an equitable distribution of the country's resources? I mean, than education, right? So that's what I'm talking about. You can talk about issues in a healthcare. I mean, I was giving an example. You see, you have a tradition like ours, which is supposed to be more capitalist oriented, that decides that, listen, let's find a way of democratizing healthcare. You know, and the reason why that is important is because either to, for example, if you're a parent and in the middle of the night somewhere your child was sick, at that time they used to have something called cash and carry. And today, children under the ages of 18 will just have to go and register and have an NHIS card, right? And be able to do so. So maybe if something as simple as a fever or something can actually end up in the child actually losing their lives because parents didn't have money at the time. And these are things that we, for some reason, right, we discount or we don't even, because it's part of a certain environment and it's organic.
It's not because these things are there, but they are there in name. In terms of quality, there seems to be a problem. For example, we know the National Health Insurance is facing a lot of problems. Payments are not going to the service providers, and they are talking about cash and carry. The education, the free education is facing a quality assurance,
every
challenge.
Every public policy would go through a certain process. There's a certain post-evaluation of whatever it is that you're trying to prosecute. And name any country in the world that will not have challenges with the issue of healthcare, for example, in terms of something that is almost revolutionary in that perspective. So you would have challenges in there. But I'm giving you real life scenarios. You understand what I'm saying? And you see, sometimes it's because, especially some of us in the middle class and people who have the wherewithal, right, would be quick to discount the importance of these things, because for us, we probably will get an opportunity to go to a private healthcare facility or something of that sort, or some people even who have the means would actually leave this country and go and seek healthcare. But when it comes to the ordinary folk, they would really appreciate it when they find themselves in a situation like that. So I'm not one of those persons that would say that we shouldn't have conversations around the challenges and issues. And I mean, you spoke about the free SHS, and I made this comment somewhere, and someone was not very happy with it. I'm saying that, listen, in boarding school, I'm sure you went to a boarding school as well, right?
But I was a day student.
Okay, but even in school, right? So I went to Form 1 in 1988 or something like that. Now, even then, right, the same issues, and sometimes it's like deja vu. So they say, oh, the bed, the nets are torn, and there are bed bags, and there's water not flowing, the beds are broken, and there's congestion, and all of those things. All those things pertain at the time. The food was bad, and you understand? Yet, people emerge from that particular situation. Look at me and you, we are sitting here today. So the issues that we have, even in our education sector, can never be as a result of free SHS. What it means is that the managers of that particular sector, yes, of course, we have to implore them to fix the issues. You understand? Mm-hmm. But when you look at the bigger argument, the argument of basically opening up and ensuring that you're giving opportunities to young people who hitherto would never have had an opportunity. It's an argument. Quality. Yeah, but you see, it doesn't. And you see, and that the debate is, what is it? The end product for me is that a child gets access to second cycle education, is able to move from there to the tertiary or be able to venture into other things. Now, for example, if you have, let's say, even a carpenter who has secondary school education with some technical skills and all of those things, will be a better carpenter than somebody who hasn't at all. And you can situate that in almost every facet of our society in terms of even people being able to understand and appreciate the issues on a day-to-day basis, and even if you want to even extend it, right? A parent that has some level of formal education is almost a better parent in terms of how they're able to nurture their young and all that. So that's what I'm saying, that in the long term, these are things that maybe because we can't feel and touch, right, we discount. So I'm talking about the broad policy direction and initiatives, and I'm sure there are a plethora of examples that we can give. But the reality on the ground is that, yes, we cannot be an isolation when it comes to the whole exigencies of what's going on in the global landscape. Okay. In terms of politics, in terms of issues to do with global warming, in terms, and sometimes I have a challenge with even our media, so I think it was a couple of days ago, and I saw some flooding in Germany. That is almost getting into Belgium and all that, and the devastation and everything. And I didn't hear one station, maybe if they did, I wasn't listening at the time, actually also make a certain attribution to the fact that
as Germany.
Yes. No, I'm not thinking about Germany. I'm making a point. I'm saying that to make attribution to the fact that for us as humans on this earth, that has been grief to us, right? We have a responsibility to this world in terms of the environment and all that, because there's something called climate change and global warming and all of those things. But do you know what the reportage is? In a couple of days, unfortunate as it is, and some people lost property and all of this thing, it's almost as if that everything is attributed to the state. But there are other, whilst I will not absolve the state and the security authority, the city authorities and stuff from the stuff they are supposed to do, we need to now elevate the discourse to a certain point, so that even the young people that are in our schools, in terms of curricula and all of this, they will have a certain appreciation of what the real situation is in terms of global warming, in terms of the sea. Our seas are getting warmer, and we have issues to do with the recent issues. We had some issues in the Volta region, the sea defense, all of these things are major issues that will require a new way of thinking, a certain appreciation of the issues and everything, so that when we are fixing it, right, we solve it. That's one of the things that we do in this part of the world. Is that
government?
But you see, it's a collective. It's a concerted effort. You understand? So whilst government has a certain responsibility, right, the media and our friends in the media, and who are basically major stakeholders in this whole democratic experiment, also have a certain responsibility. You understand? So that when it comes to the whole idea of finding solutions to the various challenges that we have, we're not basically putting plaster on the thing, but dealing with it. You understand? Uprooting the real issues and dealing with it. So that's what I'm saying, that it requires a certain level of... Otherwise, what happens is that it's almost as if that, yes, it's a government issue. Let's even push this idea or agenda that, well, these guys have come for 4 years, 8 years. Let's remove them. Let another group come. But the reality of the matter is that we are not solving the problems. But it requires a certain concerted effort.
But if you put the MPP, of which you're a member of, aside, as a Ghanaian, do you really, heart to heart, do you feel satisfied with how the country is being governed?
I do.
Really?
I am. And you see, the thing is
how
that
satisfied are you?
You see, let me tell you something, right? If you want to gauge that, right? Sometimes you probably would have to take a bit of a trek outside of this jurisdiction. Don't go far. Just even visit parts of the sub-region. And you realize that when you come home, you realize that, yes, we have challenges, all right. But even in terms of institutions, in terms of human capital, and you see, I have a challenge with even some of the commentary because the state is not only about government, even private individuals. Like, for example, the owner of multimedia, who is a private individual who had a certain vision and nurtured an idea, and today is birthed a certain thing. And when you do, it's an amalgamation of private sector entrepreneurship and ingenuity and teachers and doctors and all the people. That makes a nation. You understand what I'm saying? And sometimes I believe, I might probably get into trouble for that. I believe that we give the politicians too much credit in terms of being able to find the solutions, or even so, basically, it's almost as if that let's give them all the plaudits, right? And then let's give them all the criticism as well. When in reality, it's a concerted effort. So we need to, it's an aggregation of all the things that we are doing as a people. What you're doing here, someone might not even factor that into a whole developmental agenda, but it is. You know, because we're having a conversation, we're having a discourse. In other parts of the world, and even in the sub-region, people don't even have this opportunity. Now, if they want to address an argument or a debate about something or disagreement over something, it actually ends up in chaos. You understand? And so, yes, there's so many examples that we can give, right? Even if you put the NDC and the MPP aside, and you're thinking about, okay, this whole democratic experiment. I have given this example somewhere before. I said, listen, we woke up one morning and we lost a president. Right? In Africa, in a sub-region, we lost a sitting president. Within 5 hours or 6 hours or so, the vice president, by dint of the constitutional instrument, has been sworn in. And it's almost as if, apart from the fact that people were distraught and sad that a certain president had passed, you could not even tell that anything has happened. There are so many landmark cases that have gone to court when people have had issues with certain interpretation in our constitution. That's gone all the way to the Supreme Court, where in other parts of the sub-region or where we don't end up in civil wars and all of those. So there's so many examples that we can give. Yes, as a government, you expect that the citizenry plus the media would scrutinize us and all of those things. You know, what I have a challenge with is that when there's pushback, which means that if you prefer an opinion or you put out a certain message or commentary, which you at the time believe that is the fact, and I come out and say, oh, I can give you other reasons and maybe you're looking at it from a different perspective. All of a sudden, you rather telling me that I am actually trying to either stop you from, or I'm stifling free speech. And so there's so many things that we can do for me together as a people. And I mean, if government has to set up in certain areas and people, the citizenry are expressing disquiet, there's a responsibility of the government to fix it. I don't have a problem with that. Because there's something that we all call, it's become a cliche now. It's the whole concept of a social contract, right? And so once you do have that, you would have people asking you to do more. They would have expectations that needs calibration. They will have expectations that you need to manage and all of those things. And all of these things are part of the democratic dispensation.
What about the campaign message of you having the men? In the face of the rising rate of inflation in the country, is this what your men can do for us?
Well, I think indeed, I mean, I'm not sure you would actually contest that, but the reality on the ground, like even in my previous statement saying that, yes, we're exposed to a certain global exigency, and that has a certain ripple effect on what pertains here. And so, yes, you are right to make that assertion, but the reality on the ground is that the government has put together a lot of programs and interventions to even stem this whole inflation conversation. Then you also have to look at a conversation that we keep having, which is the whole concept of a certain structure of the economy, which, I mean, for me, it's one of the most integral aspects of this whole conversation, where it will have to get to a point where we have to be about walking the walk rather than talking. You understand what I'm saying? Because once you do that, and you are actually trying to affect the structure of the economy, there will be some pain points. And those pain points would be things like maybe we've been very strict in terms of what we can bring in, and because for one reason or the other we have a certain competitive or comparative advantage to produce locally, but for one reason or the other too, there has been a certain appetite, insatiable appetite for things that are imported and all that. So even when you go into the basket of goods and what makes up the inflation, you realize that there's a certain portion of that that is actually imported inflation. And again, because you're in the media fraternity, you can also make your checks. You realize that some of these things are inflation that's actually been imported because, one, if you take something like freight, for example, right, before pre-COVID, if something was, let's say, $1,200 to transport, today as we speak, some of it as much as 800, 900% increment, right? And how else? I mean, unless of course you are some kind of Houdini, how else are you able to navigate the whole margins that has been added to this thing so that you make even like some kind of profit and all of those things? So yeah, these are fundamental conversations that we can have. But when you're talking about the general management of the economy in terms of the building blocks that we put in place, and you can, you know, sometimes when you're doing a certain evaluation, you need to be a bit fair in terms of, okay, you want to take the NPP from the 7th of January 2017 till we started experiencing the issues with COVID in terms of the various sector by sector, and even the things that we said we will do. Of course, I mean, you even spoke about the free SHS. It will have a certain toll on the public purse, but is it something that we should do? Yes, because it has a long-term benefit to the whole economy in terms of human capital and how this human capital now contributes to the economy. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, we still do. And I think that we've proven in terms of our even orientation towards making sure that there's some social intervention policies that would mitigate some of the challenges the Ghanaian people are facing. I mean, some of the examples are when COVID hit and government intervention in the utility space and providing food and supporting businesses and even using that as a way of stimulating local production in things like nose marks and all sorts of other things. So yes, there's still issues. We are not out of the woods yet, but I believe that by and large, with the right mechanisms that have been put in place now, we would get out of the woods.
All right, you are listening to a special interest, an exclusive interaction with Eric Twum, who is vying for the national organizer position of the New Patriotic Party, the NPP. Now, Eric, let's come to your ambition. What is it about the NPP that you want to fix?
You know, like even, I'll tell you, you know, some of the like top companies in the world, I mean, Fortune 100 companies in the world, they keep, I mean, evolving. You know, from my experience when it comes to even the corporate world, there's always an R&D, a research and development, and innovation division that looks at how you can organically improve, add value to whatever it is, extend your benefits to your customers and your stakeholders and your community and all that. And a political party is the same. It's a very fluid, organic, living organism that needs that kind of re-injection of dynamism and people thinking differently, of course, with a certain institutional memory right? And then also hinged or leveraged on what we stand for as a political party. And that's really what it is. I mean, and so for a political party, our sole purpose is to win power. Everything else is secondary, right? To win, right? And so if that is the sole aim, then you really want to ensure that every time you're going into another battle, then you're battle ready. And that's why generals retire, right? So it's almost as if that you can go and call Colin Powell to come and fight. I mean, may so rest in peace and all that. So even generals retire, right? And they would impact whatever it is that they have learned to the new, because at one point in time, it's either you run out of ideas, or people get tired of you, or you become complacent. You're right, and for an entity like a political party, like the New Patriotic Party, we can't allow that to fester. And so, if you want to even be a bit more scientific, then you say, okay, in the last 2 elections, in 2016, this was our performance in terms of parliamentary and presidential. And there's always a certain extrapolation that you can do. And in 2020, this was our performance. And then you do a certain introspection and you see, okay, these are the things that we can do differently. In these areas, we were able to do very well, but it looks like we lagged behind in this aspect. But do you want to do exactly the same thing going into 2024, especially when this is almost like a landmark election in terms of no political party has been able to break the 8, as we've been made to know right now. So what it means is that it can't be business as usual. And so some of us would have to sacrifice. So this is not a quest for self-aggrandizement or a popularity contest. But the reality is that there are people, thousands and thousands of people like myself, who have sacrificed for this party. Some people have even lost their lives. Some people have lost their livelihood. Some people, so many other things that you can think of. And continue to be passionate about the party, believe in the party, have a love for country, right? And so as we go along, some of us would have to put ourselves up to represent those people, right? Of course, as a collective, as a unified political party. And so that's exactly what I am doing.
Okay, so you're talking about you've sacrificed. What is it that you've done that your party members should look up to say, oh, this guy has done this and that, and we should give him?
No, I wasn't even. I'm just trying to draw your attention to a certain generality, and there are people who have a certain affinity to the party. Okay. And so you'll be walking on the street, and some woman in the market will say, hey, you know, in the local parlance, and I'm talking about those people. But you're asking me what I have done for the party. I mean, of course, I have volunteered for the party at various stages, and from all the way from the polling station level to being a constituency executive and working for the communications team in opposition and then in government, helping with the communication strategy, supported manifesto, all of those things that I have done. And maybe some of these things are done in the background, but I have done that, and there are people out there who can attest to that fact. And that is not even the case. The reality on the ground is that once you have a certain conviction and a certain desire to serve, right, then it shouldn't be about how popular you are. It's about going out there and telling your story and selling a message and making sure that you connect with the people who are going to make the decision in the final analysis. And these are the delegates.
And the delegates have bought into your message?
Of course. I mean, the thing is that in some places, you see, there's a certain reversal of roles. You're going there to tell your story, and they are telling you what they expect of you.
Okay. I'm interested. What have you been
And that in itself is profound.
So what have they been telling you?
That's not my point. So you are going there to tell a story, to sell your message. And I say, yeah, it's a bit nice, it's flowery, it's nice, it's well thought through, it's decent and all that. But this is what we expect from our national organizer. Right? So to be responsive, to ensure that there's a certain collaboration partnership between the party and the government, there's a percolation of information flow all the way to the grassroots level. People's voices are heard. There's a certain level playing field that is ensured so that people are not aggrieved because they feel that the rules are being applied willingly or based on who, you understand, who knows who and all of those things. Yes, allocation of resources, the opportunities that would come, of course, for every political party when you're in government, there are certain opportunities. These are the things that they are telling you.
So thanks for joining us on this interaction with Eric Twum, who is running for the office of the national organizer of the NPP. What are your thoughts? Leave them on our Facebook wall and we will share that with the rest of our viewers. This is still the AM show. Good morning.